Hello, it's Film Frenzy, and yesterday I saw an early screening of the insanely odd film Welcome to Marwen, a Robert Zemeckis film that stars Steve Carell as a traumatized assault victim. So I'm going to get right into my first category, direction and visuals. For direction and visuals, I felt like Welcome to Marwen was actually pretty phenomenal. So, as you can probably tell by the term earlier, this movie is not very great. You saw the reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. They're doing really bad, but I thought the visuals were definitely a high point of the film. Like, the incorporation of, CGI, animation with, live action is pretty insane. I thought it was so unique, the visuals, and I love it. This movie is very weird and unique in many aspects. This one's a positive uniqueness. And the incorporation, just going back and forth, is really clever and really well done. I would actually love to see this get nominated for cinematography. That's just how great I thought the visuals were. Occasionally, there'd be some repetitive shots in there. Shots that originally I thought were really clever, but then they overdid them, which is, I think, a common trend in this movie, where they overdo something that's very good and clever. But, nevertheless, the visuals were really, really just gorgeous to watch. Some of the scenes I thought were just awesome. It had the World War II aspect of the action figures and the dolls mixed with just the kind of contemporary American society. And the flashback sequences I thought were really just intense. And overall, the visuals really portrayed the correct level of intensity or calmness or humor. So I thought overall they were great. A 4.5 out of 5. Only thing I would take off for is a little bit repetitive visuals occasionally. Now let's move on to analyzing the acting and character development. Very mixed bag for this category. So I'm going to start with acting, which is very positive. Steve Carell and the visuals, I think, are the two main pros of this movie. Steve Carell is excellent in it. He portrays the character so well. It's a shame this movie isn't too good because he deserves the Oscar nomination for it. He portrays so many levels, and sometimes the script's not great, which we'll talk about later, but he easily makes the best of it. He makes it very entertaining, very believable. Even though his character, I think he's not very relatable. Most of the characters aren't super relatable in this. It's just very strange. I feel like sometimes they're just all over the place. They can't really decide on how to portray his character. But Steve Carell still delivers like crazy. He's one of my favorite actors, honestly, going from comedy to dramas. He has so many different levels. Say way back where he plays a total jerk. It's insane how he can pull off so many roles. Plus The Office, he's amazing. Besides Steve Carell, I thought the acting was still great. The cast is really good for the movie. Occasionally I thought there was some not great acting. It kind of sounded almost like a school film, made for an English project or something. But I think that might partially be because they got some really weak lines that no matter what these great actors could do, they would still sound kind of silly. So overall acting was pretty great for this film. The bad part is the character development. I thought lots of the characters were very one note, cliche, not believable at all. Prime example is Nicole's boyfriend, or ex-boyfriend I guess, Kurt, and he's supposed to be a cop, but he's just a creepy guy, and it's so over the top how they make him a jerk. He's playing the heavy metal music in his car. It's just so goofy. Lots of these characters were a little cliched, I thought, and it didn't make sense to have lots of them because they didn't really do much. For example, Janelle Monáe's character and lots of the woman of Marwen, they never had any character development. I thought that was kind of strange because they were kind of important to the film. They had a lot of lines, but none of them really developed their character much at all. All very one-dimensional. Like I previously said with Kurt, I thought Nicole was a great character, but then the relationship between her and Steve Carell, I thought they were good, but then it just wasn't believable when, spoiler bar will go away when spoiler's done, when he proposes to her. It just felt so sudden. This kind of bridges into plot category also, which will be talked about later. But I thought that was just not believable. Their chemistry was great, but seemed more like a friendship. I guess maybe that's the point, but it just felt very unnatural and just the sense of awkwardness. Additionally, there's kind of this fake, almost budding romance between him and the woman that works at the hobby shop, and they were both decent characters enough, and they were very well acted, but they just did not have any romantic chemistry whatsoever. It was so odd, and I think that plagues lots of it. Just the writing and the character development. it just was not very, it wasn't well done at all, unfortunately. So that means this category, very half and half, 2.5 out of 5. For my final category, I have the story elements of plot, pacing, script, and theme. The big category, let's start right away with plot, and this is really, really rough. So this plot is so minimalistic in the worst possible sense. I mentioned earlier how the visuals were repetitive. They're nothing compared to the repetitiveness of the plot. It just keeps on going over and over again with the same tropes, and like for the first act is really good, and then you realize the movie's not going anywhere. It does not do much, and it's really annoying. I thought there was some solid exposition set up in the first act, but it doesn't go anywhere from there. It just felt very forced. There were so many cheesy moments, and the ending was just left you with a bad taste in your mouth. It was trying to be an uplifting movie. That's all it had to be. Even if it wasn't that great, it can still be a decent uplifting movie. It's coming out on Christmas, for God's sake. But it didn't even leave an uplifting feeling in me. It's supposed to be. I mean, the guy like literally recovers from like this PTSD from his terrible attack, but they do it so poorly. Like, I don't know how you butcher the story, but they were able to. I feel like they lost a human connection somewhere along the way, trying to incorporate this like clever like mix of CGI and realist stuff and like clever visual sense, but then they just like lost track of the story, and it felt like there was a bunch of times where it was like, oh, I'm gonna try and miss the court date. Oh, but my friends are telling me otherwise. Oh, I have another attack that reminds me of the guys that beat me up, and it transitions into the action figures fighting against the Nazis. There's so many repetitive fights of the same exact thing happen over and over again with the Nazis fighting Marwen woman and Mark, who's Steve Carell's character, his action figure form. I think it's Captain Hoagie is his action figure, and that was just not good at all. Pacing-wise, it was pretty solid. It's a 2-hour film. It felt about 2 hours, so it wasn't like really slow by any means. So it was a surprisingly entertaining film, despite the repetitiveness of the plot. And I thought occasionally there were some jarring moments of editing, like going from one scene to the next. But overall, the pacing was pretty solid. And I think part of that jar is because of tonal like shifts, which segues right into script. And script goes along with tone hand in hand. And boy, the tone in this movie, it makes no sense. Like when I reviewed Aquaman, I was saying like how weird it is, it doesn't really know what it is, but I still enjoyed it. This is like next level strange. This is one of the strangest movies I've ever seen. And it's not just because of the weird visuals, which are nice. This is the weird parts of the tone where it's just mixing and matching all over the place. It's really weird. Like there's bits of action, adventure, fantasy. There's some dramedy moments. There's a standard biopic. There's like psychedelic thriller. Like it's all over the place and not in a good way. It does not balance out the tones whatsoever. And you're left going from one scene to the next. All of a sudden, it just feels very unnatural. I mentioned it earlier with like the acting and character development and stuff. The whole film has this very like unsettling, just like unnatural feel to it. Like you don't know if you should be scared, like uplifted and like empowered, or just like sympathetic. It just moves your emotions around all the ways you don't want a movie to do. And I thought that was very unfortunate. And I talked about earlier about how the script has a lot of faults, and I thought often it was just really rough. There were some very cheesy lines. I felt like, at least I'm giving the film more credit than it deserves. But lots of the lines in like Marwen, the little CGI like town that he creates, were like really cheesy. I think it's supposed to be like that because he's creating the lines. Like it's like a little action figure like TV series almost. So I think that was fine. But then there were some cheesy lines in like real world too that were just weird. There was some jokes in the film, and I thought almost none of them landed, unfortunately. Like they were kind of like, yeah, that's kind of funny, but not like laugh out loud or anything, and not even close. And Steve Carell's hilarious, but they weren't giving him any good stuff, and that was really unfortunate. I know it's not the character, but if you're going to attempt jokes, at least do them right. And then there was also some lines that were just so odd and out of place that just had you scratching your head and just take you out of the film. There's a lot of that in this film where it just has its flow and it gets all choppy, takes you out over and over again. I thought that was super unfortunate. For example, this kind of goes into the theme category, which is like when he's the final battle, this is a spoiler right here, final battle against the Nazis and Marwen, he says like, don't you get it? That like, and he's like, women are the salvation or like the saviors of mankind. And that was so random. I was just like, what? Like, it was kind of just weird and out of place. And I was like, I guess that's one of the themes, maybe. It's kind of an odd theme. I don't know if it's the best theme because it's just very, like, one sex. It's not universal. This film didn't feel universal at all. Neither to males nor females. I don't know who it was going for, but it definitely is not going to connect with the audience, in my opinion. I think that's pretty clear with the Rotten Tomatoes thermometer. I think it's at, like, 18% right now. It'll probably go down a little bit more. But, like, the themes were just all over the place and mismatched. This film felt like it was kind of like contradicting itself, just so muddled, didn't know where it wanted to be at all. Like, so there's a part about like how he's like kind of obsessed in a strange way with women. Like, he wears women's shoes and he like draws all these naked women and it's just like has this like obsession with them. But it's like strange, but it doesn't, like, you don't really feel for him sometimes in that regards. It's hard to explain. But it's like you feel bad for the character, but you don't empathize with him, if that makes sense. You sympathize that he like, got beaten up. He did not deserve it. He's a good person. But you don't really like relate to him in any way. At least I didn't. And at least like my dad, who I went and saw the movie with, he didn't either. And then there's other themes. The main one is about like kind of recovering from like a situation. And like I think it's changing your mindset. I'm not exactly sure. Because it's kind of like a sudden like poor ending. And it just felt so like they didn't earn like him like saving himself at the end of the film, and it was not genuine at all, very forced, which is a lot of the movie is very forced. And spoiler again, with the whole like metaphor on how like the Belgian witch is like his addiction was so weird and felt just very over the top and like not subtle at all and just didn't really fit. And how he just randomly beats his addiction, it just felt so just like out of place. And like they could have done it so much better. There was a lot of potential here, and spoiler, there was a lot of potential with the film, and I feel like they blew it so much. I think it's this year's downsizing, except downsizing is kind of the opposite, and that had a ton of plot, while this just lacks it a lot, and it wanted to be a really good film. It thought it was going to be good, and it failed miserably. This category, I'm only giving a 1 out of 5, because it's just awful. As you saw, I was giving very, very negative thoughts on plot, pacing, script, and theme, leading to my final score. Overall, what am I going to give it? A 2 out of 5. Yep, that's pretty bad. That means a thumbs down from me. For a while, I thought I was liking it, but I think the film tries to trick you into it because it makes you feel kind of like comfortable and at place and just like a sweet, like uplifting film, and then you realize nothing's happening. The film doesn't make much sense. There's so much wrong with it. And by the end of the film, I was just not into it whatsoever. Unfortunately, I really wanted to like this film. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Make sure to like and subscribe for more awesome film videos coming soon. Expect a lot more as the end of 2018 approaches. So thank you for watching. Film Frenzy signing off. Bye.